So I'll hand over now to Linda, who will be presenting to you on the Competency AI software that they have.
I don't read this right. Good morning, everybody. As Kirian said, I'm with EMS, Education Management Solutions. I'm a product marketing manager, and the company is located in the suburb of Philadelphia, Exton, PA. Has anyone been there before? Does anybody know? Who's been to Philadelphia in this group? Okay, a few people. So I think it was just shy of 10,000 miles. So she's right. We really do want to support SimGHOSTS, and we really are very happy that they have asked us to help host this event. Competency AI is revolutionizing the way medical education is delivered. We truly believe that there has been a change in the way people teach. There has been didactic learning, the classroom learning, and now it's moving to how do we know if a student, when he or she finishes his or her medical training, can move into the role of residency and be proficient and know what he or she has to do. As it turns out, it has not been a successful transition, and that is what has made Thomas Jefferson come to EMS and ask if we would be willing to help work with them and develop this product. Sidney Kimmel Medical College at Thomas Jefferson Hospital. They asked, can you please aggregate multiple sources of data into a competency framework? And that is exactly what we did. Competency AI is a powerful artificial intelligence platform that tracks learner performance against competencies and EPAs. EPAs are Entrustable Professional Activities. And we'll talk a little bit about what they are. But the challenges that allowed them to come to us and us to work with them, as you see up there on the screen, are you able, as a medical institution, as an educating body, to assess and report competency profile for your learners, for your students? Are you able to utilize the American Association of Medical Colleges competency essentially framework, which they say assesses longitudinal learner performance, which, so you know what that means. It means through the continuum of years that they're being educated. Are you able to identify at-risk learners? I wasn't that aware of this, and maybe you are, but with the number of students who are studying hard, hoping to become physicians, there is a fair number that have gone into their first year, had problems, and really not had the proper help to figure out what they had to do to get them to the right track. And so the dropout rate and the problems around that whole subject have been much more serious than most of us realize. So this application helps identify at-risk learners. And the curriculum can be better aligned with competency assessments and accreditation groups, such as the Liaison Committee on Medical Education. That group is accrediting for not just the U.S. educational institutions in the medical market, but also for Canadian organizations. Competency-based education correlates learner knowledge and active practice, and then tracks performance along key clinical competencies. So if you look up on the left, you'll see knowledge education and the typical didactic learning. We are working with all the content management that many of the schools use, ExamSoft, Canvas, BlackBoard, D2L. And then we have what has been the simulation market provides solutions such as our Simulation IQ Enterprise, Beeline has solutions, CAE, all those competitive LMS systems, learning management software systems. Then the assessment occurs across that 4-year continuum. So the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education indicated that this is the problem. The residency programs provide feedback that residents were unable to perform core tasks on day one. ACGME consolidated the competency gaps into 13 primary categories, or EPAs, Entrustable Professional Activities. ACGME pushed the American Association of Medical Colleges to ensure that these are the focus of medical college curriculum or medical education curriculum. Medical ed curriculum and learner performance is currently executed and managed in silos. So the problem is when they indicated you're going to have to work with another discipline, so you're starting to be a physician, but you're going to be working with nurses, with people in other fields, oftentimes they weren't very well prepared. And when it would get to day one, week one, month one in the residency, there was a total disconnect. So it states residency competency gaps create patient safety and care risk for hospitals. So when we all talk about simulation, we're always talking about patient outcomes. And so that's another key part of this. If these students aren't well prepared and cannot execute, we're going to have errors and problems with the patients. ACGME analyzes competency gaps, creates baseline framework, modifies the curriculum, and shifts toward this competency-based education. So medical schools are being told they have no choice. They must revamp their curriculum and develop a process for fusing assessment data and measuring against the Entrustable Professional Activities. So again, keep picturing, you go to medical school, you learn all these skills, you are quizzed, you are taking exams, and you're very capable of indicating that you understand about anatomy, etc. But if you have not been judged and studied about these competencies that deal with some of what you and I might call soft skills, you're probably not going to execute all that information that you have learned. So on the left column, you'll see some of the earlier questions. Are you able to assess and report competency profile? So what they asked was competency data warehouse, the integration of the assessment data with those LMS systems, intelligent competency tracking, leveraging machine learning and AI capabilities. Can we do that? Shall we do that? Will we do that in competency AI? And the answer is yes. Are you able to effectively utilize the American Association of Medical College competency information? And yes, to the right, we talk about our longitudinal learner performance. So over the continuum, we look at the cohort comparison. So the cohort is the actual class of 2020, class of 2021, and we do a comparison. And the automated at-risk learners are based on scores, on rules, and the use of AI, of artificial intelligence, facilitates that. It makes it easier to say, is Linda Penrod performing well compared to cohorts? And is she performing in the skill sets that we are analyzing at a level of whatever the school requires, 70%, 60%, 80%? And lastly, again, talking about some of the accreditation, curriculum assessment based on competency profile, learner, and cohort assessment. The terminology also is a little different. When they start talking about competency-based education, you talk about blocks, about skills, about threads, about competencies, and EPAs. And then you talk about that in terms of the users. The users include learners, academic affairs advisors, student affairs advisors, and faculty. So those four groups at any point in time can go into the system and take a look and say, wow, this is how Linda Penrod is doing, this is how John Doe is doing. And they are able, from their perspectives, to do something actionable. The learner is able to figure out where he or she is weak. The advisor is able to say, this is where we think you need some educational assistance. And the faculty also can modify the way they're teaching. And the schools are very serious about, we're paying the professors, we want the students to graduate. It doesn't do anything for them if they have a high percentage of fallout in the university. So they clearly are interested in this tool helping them. The Competency AI has multiple presentation views, and we'll look at that in a couple minutes. These views provide data in a way that's relevant to the multiple roles. The idea also of dashboards. If an individual institution decides that they would like to have certain tabs and add qualifiers, we can easily do that. If they wanted to use it as Jefferson has defined it, then that's so be it too. This is a web diagram. This is essentially giving you the opportunity as, again, a user, be it the student, be it the faculty, be it the advisor, to look within a time frame. The circle within the circle within the circle represents year 1, year 2, year 3. And then if you see a percentage against that given point, if it looks like it's 80%, it's a visual representation, it means that Linda is at 80% against one of those specific competencies. So if it talks about interpersonal and communication skills, and they nicely gave me this so I didn't have to point, if you look there, it shows that I'm almost on track. And if you look at another spot here, knowledge for practice, I'm not doing as well. I'm probably at the 75% point. So the preference is yours. You'll see a couple other charts. We show a bar graph representation or this web diagram, spider diagram, however you choose to call it. And there's the representation I mentioned that is a longitudinal, by block, by phase. And the block and phases, again, are talking to the time frames in which the students are going to classes and learning these skills, be it patient care, knowledge for practice, practice-based learning and improvements, professionalism. And that's what Competency AI is doing, putting this together in a way that all the users can at any time have a snapshot. I mentioned the 4 roles. Let me define them a little more specifically. The academic affairs, academic advisor role supports the faculty and teaching staff of the medical school. This office provides resources to professors and clinical educators, including faculty workshops, new faculty orientation. What does the faculty need and what should they change? Student affairs or student advisor role, this is the central support resource throughout a student's medical school career. And they provide academic advising, career counseling, personal support services, and student wellness. And then we know what the learner is. An administrator role has access to all versions, all dashboards. The components, you see up there, it references components. Components are clinical exercise, exam, quiz, or science skills. Make sure everybody's seeing up there. I think it's upside down. Hold on. There we go. So components. So you see components, skills, threads, body systems, competencies, and EPAs. Skills are expected behaviors the students are to know and be able to show and do. Closing, communication, just a few of the ones I'm listing there. Sorry, I think that clicked too soon. And then the idea here that you also have threads. The threads are the disciplines: anatomy, biochemistry, clinical skills, genetics. And the competencies, there are 6 that are required, and Jefferson has decided they want to have 8 competencies. So they include such things as interpersonal and communication skills, knowledge by practice, professionalism, patient care. And the competencies include practice-based learning and improvement, system-based practice, well, the same ones, and EPAs rather, I'm sorry. The 13 activities that all medical students should be able to perform upon entering residency, regardless of their future career specialty. And these were defined by the American Association of Medical Colleges. So 13 is the magic number, and they're weighted pretty heavily in determining who's going to graduate or not graduate. EPA 1, gather a history and perform a physical exam. 2, prioritize a differential diagnosis following a clinical encounter. 3, recommend and interpret common diagnostic and screening tests. 4, enter and discuss orders and prescriptions. 5, perform general procedures of a physician. 6, provide an oral presentation of a clinical encounter. 7, form clinical question 2 and retrieve evidence to advance patient care. 8, give or receive a patient handover transition care responsibility. 9, collaborate as a member of an interprofessional team. 10, recognize a patient requiring urgent or emergent care and initiate evaluation and management. 11, obtain informed consent. 12, perform general procedures of a physician. And 13, identify system failures and contribute to a culture of safety and improvement. As a patient myself, learning about this, I thought, wow, that they didn't require this before is amazing, right? It's like simulation to me. I think about simulation, and I've said to several doctors since I became involved in this business, did you learn through simulation? And when they are young and new, I said, well, how did you practice before you started working on me? So the reality is we are all believers, I think, in simulation here. Well, I also believe it's important that they require these competencies to be mastered before individuals are moving on to become physicians. The artificial intelligence part of this. So one is natural language processing and the other is predictive learning. Some examples of how they're applied. Similarly, when you have predictive learning, you'll model the past, and you might all know about predictive learning. You predict the indicators of a pattern in the future, and that will allow you to see what's happening going downstream. And that is as simple as if a person has shown over and over that, or student, that they have 50 percentile numbers when it comes to being tested in anatomy and 80% in one of these other skills, the question is, where do you start looking at them as an at-risk learner? Is 3 or 4 or 5 classes where they're struggling where you worry, or is it 10? And again, what I've been taught is that it's emphatic that a school and a professor will know where that cutoff point is. It's nothing that any of us would know. It will be because they've been teaching for N number of years, and they as a collective team will make that determination. But the point I want to make here is that predictive learning is part of AI. It's part of what underlies this application. So many applications that start aggregating the information, they're not based on AI technology. Since this is based on AI technology, it should be more of a surefire, much more advanced way of determining success or failure. This is the dashboard that an academic affairs person sees. Could be, that you look at this and say, well, I thought the learners looked at this too. But there are subtle differences, and I'm not going to go through as I did the 13 EPAs, but let the point be that if you look across the axis there, you'll see components, skills, threads, body systems, competencies, and EPAs. And as the individual academic advisor looks at this, he or she will be looking across the top and will be looking at up here, skills, and look at that. That graph will indicate when you get to systems that they're struggling. And it does have color coding so they know where there again should be some help. This talks about competencies and about EPAs. And then this gets scored, 5 out of 13, 8 out of 8. And they also have a total, it's not shown here, but the total will let them know of the students they're advising, how many they have issues with, and which persons, of course. But this is called the Academic Advisors Dashboard. Next is the Student Affairs Dashboard, and the student will also take a look and see himself where he stands in the curriculum. The graph that goes along with this can be either that spider graph and or that bar graph, depending on what the person prefers. And they're able to access this information, and also, if you notice over here on the right, it talks to two terms, all phases and blocks. And blocks have to do, again, while they're going through their first, second, third year, they might have 4 blocks, and that is the essential classroom configurations. They might have all anatomy classes in the first block. They might have all science skills in the second block. And then the phases are year 1, year 2, year 3. And I keep saying about Thomas Jefferson, the reason I say that is we did not develop this in the absence of having a well-acknowledged medical institution tell us what they believe, they wanted for their practice, but what they believe other institutions will also want. the bar graph. This block is a segment within a phase and also can overlap. That was a point to be made there. And then basically this talks about the implementation. We call it enablement methodology. This essentially talks to what we do, and right now I can tell you we have 2 organizations, institutions, Jefferson and another, working with us, and we have 6 engaged in the first phase. The discovery phase, we sit down and say, who are the key stakeholders, and what are your goals, and what are your assessment tools? Are you using Canvas? Are you using Beeline? Are you using our solutions? So we really clearly understand what it is that they have today that we need to integrate with. Then we move into a planning stage. They define the project team. We have the project team. We define the deliverables and the timeline. And then we go ahead and we look at how we're going to interface all of this. Moving on, then we want to manage the organization based too on what, in their case, they have a board and they have a team that works through all these, the entire process until we believe then we get into the data warehousing where we have integrated everything within the institution. And at EMS, beyond the enterprise flagship product, we have developed some very simple mobile products, and what we have tried to do, and they've asked us to do, is to look at how we can make all this accessible through an Android or through the iPod or through an iPhone. They've asked how can we have a fast way of checking into classes. We have an application for that. And the video capture, I think I mentioned to several of you that might have been one of my other presentations yesterday, but this allows you to record, debrief, annotate, all using your mobile phone. And then we have put a lot of money into KPIs, key performance indicators. We have really nice reporting, and we have been told by people they spent weeks compiling data, and with a touch of the button, we really can provide some very important reporting for the total technology. And then again, if you have the Competency AI with that, you have a very well integrated solution. Totality. We're trying to make it so that people in the medical education field say we need to go to EMS, they can provide what we need, and one thing talks to the other. There's nothing worse in any institution than when you have disparate solutions and they don't integrate. So I think that is our presentation. I would love to take any questions, but you can see we're pretty excited and we hope you'll want to come and talk to us more about it. Do we have any questions?
Didn't actually, I don't think you actually mentioned it, but on the data collection, is that done through like rubrics? Whether
Yes.
you do that live or posted?
Both, actually. They wanted both. They wanted live streaming, they want live collection, they wanted to be able to use, we have a rubric. I'm not that detailed yet on what that is, but I actually just read yesterday about that.
Right, so the grading, whether it be during the event or after the event, that's how you're collecting the AI.
Yes, You're familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Has anybody seen anything like this? Has anybody been involved? I've been looking now for some competitive information. I know that's not necessarily what anybody here focuses just on, but okay.
I've got a question up the order.
I'm sorry, say it again?
So I'm just wondering the sort of time frames that are involved. So if you went to an organisation and started from scratch.
Right.
So
I'm glad you asked that. 6 months from the time we start discovery, we have tested that with one of our prospects, and they said 6 months from start to implementation. Oh, yes, sorry.
Who's responsible for the security of the data? Is that the EMS or is that the institutions today?
I'm sorry, you said who is responsible?
For the security of the data?
The security of the data? Well, we make sure everything is encrypted. We have encryption, but we work with, I know Jefferson has an IT team that we're working with. So we have our CTO, Luke Saxena, and we have 2 individuals here and 2 offshore that are working with them. I think because I heard there were 10 people just working on that issue to make sure everything is secure. But everything we do is encrypted and just kind of the way we do business. So.
Is that data stored on site at the university or institution, or is it in the cloud-based?
Well, everything we do going forward is cloud-based, but can be on-premise. And that again gets back to what does the institution want to do. We're doing actually both, and we're trying to do both at Jefferson just so that we have that example that we can show everybody. But we're big on the cloud. Okay, anything else?
Any other questions?
I have cards up here, and also I know that Kieran's made my name available, so we really would love to, and I might reach out. I have the list of everybody that's attended. If you don't mind, I'd like to ask questions after this lecture.
So this would translate to other disciplines as well, Linda, not just...
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda.